Well, thank you so much, Toby, for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and I am so, so excited to sit here and learn from you. You have been such a great friend to my dad, and he's told me so much about you. So I'm really excited to hear a little bit in your own words as well. You're very successful in California as loan the mortgage industry, and I believe branch manager is what your role is. So I'm really, really excited to learn a little bit more about your story. I've heard very few tidbits here and there from my dad, and of course on social media. But I'd love to know, throughout your journey, how did you kind of start off going into mortgage, and how did that kind of lead into what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love your dad. He's definitely a dear friend and confidant. So thank you for having me. And so I have been in mortgages now for about almost 22 years, just a little over. In February will be 22 years. And I got in, it was kind of a fluke. I wasn't in high school thinking like I want to get out and do mortgages. It was probably the furthest thing from my mind, in all honesty. When I graduated from high school, I actually went into the Navy, and I spent 8 years there right out of high school before I got into mortgages. And the way that I got into mortgages is a quite funny story. So I had actually transitioned from active duty to reserves. I was working full time, and I was going to school as a court reporter. I met my husband in the Navy, so we had just gotten married, and the next natural thing in our book was to buy a house. Well, we lived in San Diego at the time, and that was just completely out of our price range. So we ended up coming up to Marietta on a weekend and looking at some of the new build homes. And we just fell in love. We put our little $1,000 earnest money deposit down at that point in time. And that week, between the time that we viewed the home and the time that we met with our loan officer, I just fell in love with the process. So, I was tasked with the general things, fill out an application and get together all your documents. But I was really intrigued by the process. So I wanted to know, like, I couldn't wait a week. I wanted to know what my debt to income ratio needed to be. Was I within that? What did my credit need to be? What was the appraisal process? So I actually did a ton of research. I found the VA handbook online myself. I read all the guidelines. I knew what our debt to income ratio was supposed to be. Basically, after that week had gone, I handed my loan officer over a package, and I basically said, we're qualified for this. I've already figured out my payment. I know it's going to be this. Here's the appraisal, because back then you could choose the appraisals. This is the appraiser that's really good in this area. And he just sat there for a few minutes, and I wasn't 100% sure what to think. And he quickly offered me a job right after that, like literally within 5 minutes of me pushing my across the table to him. And then I was like, that hadn't even occurred to me at that point. And my husband Jay's like kind of kicking me under the desk, like, yes, she'll take it. She'll take it. And so, and that's history. I started off as a loan officer assistant. Within 6 months, I had gotten my real estate license, because back then there wasn't a mortgage originator's license. There was just a real estate license. You had to get that. And then I was a full-fledged loan officer on my own. And I have been that ever since. I am an originating branch manager now, which just means I'm still a loan officer. And I also have loan officers that report to me, and I do my best to assist them and help them grow their businesses as well.
Wow, that is amazing. That is so cool. And I think that is kind of, you said a funny story. I was like, oh, I wonder, because sometimes, people say funny story and then it's like, I don't know, different. Sometimes it's a whirlwind. And I don't mean on the podcast, I mean just in conversation.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh no, that is actually like kind of funny. You just like happen to do everything because you're like, oh, this is fun. Why not? And then you're like, okay, yeah, you should work for me then.
I know. And I really couldn't imagine myself doing anything different than what I'm doing right now. I love it so much. I love I mean, I guess my most favorite thing is just helping my clients just get into a home. I mean, that's the dream of American home ownership, right? So that's the dream. So I'm fulfilling a dream, but I'm also, I love the problem solving. I love the numbers. I love figuring it out. I love helping my real estate agents. There's not, I mean, the market's tough right now. I guess I don't love that, but
Sure.
I love everything about it. So there you
Well,
go.
that's great to hear, and that's so awesome. We were kind of talking a little bit before we started recording, is that sometimes people like we're forced kind of into like the norm of just do what everyone else is doing, just go to school, and then you'll figure it out. It's like, hey, there are so many opportunities that they don't mention sometimes in college courses, and you don't even realize until you go out and you just try things and you just
Hmm.
happen to find things that you just fall in love with. Because you had mentioned you had never thought of loans until you have to go get one, and you're
Yeah.
like, actually, this is not like filling out this paperwork, doing looking for all this is fun, and you would
Yeah.
have never known
Nope.
had not done those things. So I think that is a really interesting testament to just trying so many things out. I think you don't know until you don't try.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Definitely. Well, that is so cool. So I would love to know, you had mentioned that, out of high school, that you went into the Navy, which is so cool. And thank you so much for your service. I appreciate that. That is awesome. And a few years at that. It's not just like a one and done. You did 8 years, which is so cool. Is there anything that you tell to either your 17-year-old self, kind of looking back at the life that you had, the journey you've been on? Is there any advice that you give either to, 17-year-old Tobie in the past, or maybe what you've learned from everything that you'd love to apply and tell 17-year-olds kind of moving forward in the future?
So I think so. I was thinking about that question, and there's actually a few points. Like there's things that I would tell my 17-year-old self, my 23-year-old self, my 26-year-old self, and so I'll give you all three.
Okay.
So at 17, I would just say, um, going into the military, like I would not change that for the world. I grew up so much in the military. I think if I could talk to my 17-year-old, I said, take advantage of all the resources that the military gives you. There's so many things that I could have done that I just did differently because I was a kid at that point in time. And then I guess 23 to 26-year-old getting into the mortgage business, I would say I wish that I had a coach, right? It
Mhm.
was just kind of, fly by the seat of my pants at that point. I had a mentor, but I didn't have a coach or a process or a system. So get systems quicker. And then the last thing would be just never stop working out. Like I know when I transitioned from the Navy to civilian life, in the Navy, you were conditioned to work out every single day. And then it was like, I got out, I was like, oh, I don't have to work out anymore. But then, but that had different effects. So those would see the big three things. So use more of your resources, get coaching sooner, and don't ever stop working out. So
That's
simple,
pretty.
but but they're decisions, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes the smallest decisions can impact you um, a lot. So
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. I know you're like, yeah, it's like the simple things, but I think because we've heard those things, those basically those three things of like being very aware of what you have right now. I know it's so easy to take advantage or not take advantage, but take it for granted what you have. Working out, having a good daily discipline and having accountability with the coach. Those are things that people always say to us. We're like, okay. And I think sometimes our brain is just like, okay, I've heard that again. I don't care anymore. I've heard that. I don't need to do it. I've heard it. Oh well. And it's like, well, it's something new. But it's like those are the foundations of our life, Those are some really
100%.
great things to always remember.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
100% agree with that.
I'd love to wrap it up a little bit with this question because I think coaching and accountability, that is such a great foundation for
Hmm.
anything we do in our lives. And I think it's really important to seek out someone that you admire in every space and every aspect of your life, because otherwise I feel like I know for me at least, I feel so like lost. Like, oh, I don't know. I want to excel, but I don't really know what to do. There's so many things I can do. So when you did start getting into coaching and you were starting to learn more from people that you were starting to admire, is there any, maybe I'm sure there's been a lot, but is there any kind of advice that kind of comes to you right now, or quote, or something that had said to you, maybe it was at the perfect timing, and it's just something that you still kind of live by to this day?
So I would say, so I have it on my wall, so I'm going to look here, but
Okay.
basically, action eradicates fear, right? So the action that you do is, I mean, action eradicates fear. So if there's something that you're scared of, take action. And that's something that I've heard many times over the years. And so there's a lot of things that I stick to and that pop to mind. So I would say that would be the one that I look to the most.
That is a great quote. I don't think I've heard it in that phrase specifically before, but that is so amazing. And it's kind of turned me a little bit. But I think that's a really, really great thing, because I was talking to someone just yesterday. He was mentioning how he wanted to write more blog posts. And he was like, I just haven't been writing them because I want a good topic to talk about. And I don't really have that yet. I'm like, that's a great point. But, why don't you just start writing something? Because I know for me, at least with writing, I loved writing ever since I was a kid. And there are so many things that you find when you start something versus when you don't do it at all.
Yeah.
Like, I will write and I'll be like, I don't really know what I want to write. And I'll just let the words come out. And then eventually, hopefully, the hope is that I'll start writing a paragraph. I'm like, wait a minute, I need to expand upon this. And then it's an entire new piece. I'm like, you'll never know, but I wouldn't have known if I didn't start writing.
100%. Sometimes you just got to start. I know sometimes if I get stuck and I can't quite get going, I just push myself to start, because then it's like it opens the floodgates. And again, action eradicates fear. So scared of whatever it is, just start doing it and it'll work itself out.
Definitely, especially when you mentioned like working out. That is definitely the number one thing I feel like when people like to start it, it's like pushing something uphill, like like metal uphill. But then once you actually get into it, like 10 minutes, and you're like, actually, this is really not that bad. And then afterwards, like, I'm glad I did that. But starting is so hard sometimes.
I know. Believe me, I know. But if you can just do it, then you'll be good.
Yes, definitely. Well, Tobie, thank you so much for the time you've given me today. It means so much, and I had so much fun during this conversation. And there's so much that you said that has really like struck a chord with me. So I'm really excited to go do a little bit more and expand upon that, because I think what you said is just gold, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing it with me.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This has definitely been fun.
Oh, that's great to hear. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.